Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this Blended live session today that we're doing all about collaboration, creativity, and assessment, and that will be specifically talking about achieving those things through the tool Padlet. I wanted to sort of explain a little bit about why that is before we get started, because typically with Blended we tend to be quite sort of neutral about which platforms we use, and we don't tend to do training sessions that are sort of specific to a certain tool. And the reason that we've kind of made an exception with Padlet is essentially the fact that we at the team at London CLC who produce Blended have found the tool Padlet to be extremely useful particularly over the course of the pandemic, but actually we were using it a lot before then as well, and really versatile and having lots and lots of different sort of functionalities that we found to be useful for all sorts of different situations, whether it's using with pupils or whether it's in training sessions. So we're really pleased and really grateful that Zoheb has joined us for this session today. Zoheb heads growth for Padlet and sort of shares it with as many people as possible. So he's agreed to do that for us today and share some of the features of what Padlet can do. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Zoheb, who is going to talk us through a little bit of a kind of presentation.
Thanks, Rowan. Okay, so I believe that most of you would have already used Padlet, but for people who are not familiar with Padlet, so Padlet is the easiest way to create content, to put it on the internet, to share it with other people, and then to invite other people to collaborate with you around that content, right? So if you create an account on Padlet, the first thing that you're presented with is the dashboard, which is a collection of all the content that you have created on Padlet. Now, to create content on Padlet, you of course create Padlets. Now, a lot of people refer to it as simply boards. Now, some of our old timers refer it to as walls. And that basically comes from the fact that one of the first layouts that we launched was a wall, and that moniker has stuck around for a while. So to create a Padlet, you click on this Make a Padlet button on your dashboard. And when you do that, you're going to be presented with a list of choices. Now, these choices are what we call formats, which allow you to display content in specific ways, right? So at the moment, we offer 7 of such layouts. So depending on the exercise that you're doing, you can choose the layout that fits your needs. So for example, if you're looking for a virtual bulletin board where students can pin posts on it, you can go for a wall format. It's one of the most popular format that is used by teachers. If you're looking for a bit more structure to your content, you can go for the stream format, which puts posts in a top-down format. Another one which is very popular is the shelf one, which basically allows you a bit more structure because you can then have columns of content. If you're doing an exercise which involves, let's say, a storyline, you can go for a timeline format. It will put posts in a horizontal line, which a very clear structure that goes from left to right. And if you have an exercise where it is related to location, let's say you're doing an introduction exercise where you've asked students to put it on a map where they are from, you can go ahead with a map format. So a lot of choices depending on the exercise that you want to do. You can choose the layout, and it's not necessary that you choose a layout to begin with. You can just choose one format, and later on, if you're not happy with it, or if you want to present the content in a different way, you can just change the format on the fly. So it's quite flexible. I will just get started with a default wall format. Now, before I go ahead into explaining a Padlet a bit more. Now, if you're a very frequent Padlet creator, there's a very convenient shortcut that you can use. It's called padlet.new. And if you're logged into your account, it will automatically basically take you to the Create a Padlet page. So again, one of those things where you can conveniently bookmark it, and it makes creating a Padlet a lot easier. So once you create a Padlet, by default, we'll automatically choose certain settings for you. So for example, we'll give it a title. We are going to give it a default description. Almost always you'd want to change that. So let's say for the purpose of this demo, I want to do an exercise on Winston Churchill. Everyone knows Mr. Churchill. For description, now description is a very powerful field. So a lot of times what teachers do is they actually put the instructions on how they want to do the exercise in the description itself, and it can be as long as you want. So as a sample, if I want to put anything interesting that you can find on Mr. Churchill, right? So just a bit of instructions that can guide the students for that specific exercise. You can put it here in the description. You can choose an icon if you want to customize the Padlet a bit more. By default, each Padlet gets assigned a random URL, which is an alphanumeric set of characters. Now, if you're just using it for your personal use, you can keep it, you don't need to change it. But for example, if you want to share it with people and you want to give it a name that is easier to remember, you can change it on the fly. So for this case, let me just choose something which is relevant to the exercise that I want to do, call it Churchill. Okay. You have the option of basically choosing a wallpaper, the color scheme and fonts. By default, we automatically assign options to you, but of course you can upload your own wallpaper. You can choose one of our other preset defaults if you want. There are a lot of other options. I will explain it a bit more later, but to get started, you do not need to change everything. You can go with the defaults, and once you're done with that, you can just basically go ahead next and start posting, right? So that's all it takes to get started with creating a Padlet. Now, obviously, the next thing is to start putting content on Padlet. Now, the easiest way to post anything on Padlet is to double click anywhere on the screen, right? Another quick way is to just click on the plus button at the bottom right over here, and that will again open this post widget. Now, for people who have been using Padlet for a while, you'll see that recently we have made quite a lot of changes to the way this post is displayed. Now, earlier, what we used to do was, depending on the format that you're using, the post will be positioned exactly where it is going to appear. And one thing that happened was sometimes the space used to be quite constrained in the way it is being presented. Now we have decoupled the content creation from the display itself, right? So the post widget appears basically independently of where the other content appears on the Padlet. Now, this post widget can be in sort of 3 modes, right? So at the moment, it's in a docked mode, where it is conveniently sitting at the bottom. It is quite useful if you want to see what other activity is happening on the Padlet while you are typing out your response, or if you want to go in a focus mode where you want to just focus on what you're typing and are not very concerned about what is happening in the Padlet in the background. You can just click on the maximize button, and then it will center the post for you so that you have all the time and space that you need to type in your content. The third mode that is basically the minimize mode. So let's say if you started typing something, but if you're not ready to post yet, you can just minimize it, observe the activity, and then come back to it again later. Now, for any post on a Padlet, typically it has 3 things. One is basically the title of the post. So let's say I just want to put in Churchill. Then there's an attachment or a file. And a file could be anything. It could be a Word document, it could be an image, it could be a video that you want to upload. And you have a lot of options that I'm going to go in a bit later on how you can upload a file. And the third thing is basically just free form text. If you want to write a description to the post or any explanation, that can basically go in the third section. Right. So let me show you, the different ways of how you can post content on a Padlet, because it's very powerful and a lot of things that you can do on a post itself. So by default, in this section, you have a set of default options. The first one is basically upload a file. So a lot of times you're going to have a file on your desktop that you want to upload to a Padlet. You can just click on upload over here, and it's going to open a file picker, a very standard interface that you can then just double click on the file and upload it to Padlet. The second option is if you want to just take a quick selfie and post it, and if you're doing an exercise where you want students to take a selfie with the exercise that we've given them and then post it. Again, this is a very quick and convenient tool to use the camera on your computer or your phone to do that. The third one is if you have a link, and it could be any link, any web page, any YouTube video that you want to basically put it as an attachment, you can use this link option to paste that link, and it will automatically embed that link with a very beautiful preview on the post itself. The next one is image search. If you're looking for something, you can use an embedded search, and I'm going to show it a bit in detail later to do the search from within Padlet itself. Just find the thing that you're looking for and click on it to embed it. You can, of course, click on the 3 dots over here to access more options. So things like drawing. So if you're doing a design-based exercise and you want your students to draw it out instead of just typing it out, this is a very convenient way of doing that. And it's especially very powerful if the students have access to tablets, so they can just draw on the tablet and upload it over here. You have options like audio and video recording. So again, for exercises, let's say if you're doing an introduction-based exercise where at the start of the semester, where you want students to record a mini clip, an audio or a video clip to introduce themselves and post it on a Padlet, you can use these two options to do that. We also have another option where you can link another Padlet to the post. Now, this is again something that is very powerful, and if, for example, if you have a case where you want to maintain a master Padlet for a class and just want to upload links to Padlet for every weekly activity, you can do that. Just maintain a master Padlet and you can share the link with the students. And every week you can just put a post with the weekly exercise on that Padlet itself. Another use case where it is very popular is if you're doing a homework kind of assignment where you can ask students to submit links to Padlets as assignments. So they can work on their assignment on a completely different Padlet and then just post the link over here. So they're not constrained by all the information. They can put it in a single post itself. This is again one of the things that we have we have recently changed. So earlier, for people who are familiar with the old interface, we used to display this information in a list. So it was not very it was a bit difficult to parse. Now we have changed the interface. The icons are a lot more easily accessible and it's a lot more evenly spaced out. So it's a lot easier to look for the option that you want to use. There's also an embedded search functionality. So again, this is the same shortcut that you get if you click on the image search feature. So if you're, let's say, looking for anything, you can start typing and immediately we are gonna open a embedded search window. Now this search is very powerful. You can have access to all the web links based on the term that you have typed. You have access to images. You have access to GIFs. You have access to videos on YouTube and from some of the other sources. If you're doing a media-based exercise, a music-based exercise, and let's say you want students to upload playlists of songs, you can actually use the Spotify option to do that. So this is something that is very powerful. We see a lot of people use this as the primary interface for adding content to Padlet because it just makes it very easy. And all the content is actually goes through a safety filter. So it's fit for consumption for students. So you do not have to worry about not safe for work content that can pop up over here. So let me go ahead and just choose one of the images. Let me take this. Before you want to upload it, I can add a caption if I want to describe it. Now I can go ahead and write a text or I can just go ahead and post it. So it's not, so both title or an attachment or text is optional in a post. You can just pick and choose what you want to post. Now, once you're ready to post, you will see that there's a publish button. Now, again, this is one of those things that did not exist earlier. So earlier, the moment you started typing a post, we used to basically immediately broadcast it in real time, and it used to appear on Padlets that are being viewed by other people. So if you have made any mistakes, those mistakes also used to get broadcasted. If you want to change anything, you could only do it post the change has been published. Now we have changed that. So whatever you see that you're currently in the process of posting and you have not yet published is private to you. So if someone else basically goes and accesses this Padlet, they will not be able to see what you're trying to post, right? And if you're not done, as I said, you can just basically minimize it, right? You can continue to work on other stuff and always come back to it later and publish it, right? So to publish it, you can use the publish button, or you can use a very convenient shortcut, which is Control Enter on Windows or Command Enter on Mac to publish the post. And once you have published the post, that's when it is going to be visible to everyone else, right? So this is, again, one of those things that that we have changed recently on how we publish information on a Padlet. And you're not constrained by basically only writing one post at a time. So you can go ahead and write multiple posts, and all of them can basically stay in a draft mode. So for example, I can choose this, I can minimize it, and then I can come back and post another. And if I'm not yet ready to publish it, I can minimize it again. And once I'm happy with the content, I can basically go ahead and publish all drafts together. Okay, so again, a lot of activity that now you can do, which doesn't need to be broadcasted in real time, so that you have enough time to compose your thoughts, make sure the content that you want to publish looks good to you, and then you can go ahead and publish it. So these are some of the ways in which you can start posting content from within Padlet itself. Of course, if you have content elsewhere, it's very easy to bring it to Padlet. For example, if you have a link that you have copied from elsewhere. So let me show you a quick demo. Let's say I do a web search for Churchill, and let's say I want to post this Wikipedia article, right? So I can come back over here, and I can go to a post, and I can use one of the link functionality to paste it, right? So this is one way of doing it. But there's also a very convenient shortcut of pasting a link. This is to just come to the Padlet and use the shortcut, the command V, and which will automatically basically embed that link in a post, right? So again, one of those things which makes adding external content very easy to a Padlet. Then you can type in your title. If you want to type a description, you can go ahead and do that. And once you're ready, you can publish it. If you have a local file somewhere and you want to basically upload it, as I said, there's an option where you can choose the file from your picker. Or another very quick shortcut to do that is just to drag and drop the file to the Padlet. And again, it will be automatically uploaded, and then you can publish it. Okay? So numerous ways of basically, quickly adding content to a Padlet. Now, once you have added your content and you want to share it with others, there are a few things that you'll have to decide. How do you want to share the Padlet? I mean, how public or private that Padlet needs to be? The people who are going to have access to the Padlet, what kind of access rights they should have. So to access all those settings, you can click on the share button on the top over here. So by default, every Padlet that is created, it's given a default sharing setting of secret. So secret basically means that the Padlet is not advertised on Google. So people will not be able to find it if they search for it. But if you share the link with them, then they will be able to access it. Okay. Now, this is a default setting. Of course, you can go ahead and change it by choosing one of the other options in the change privacy setting. So at the moment, you have 5 options. You can go from keeping it completely private, so it's only visible to you. And if you want to explicitly invite members, you can do so with the add members option over here. So only people you have invited will be able to access that Padlet. You can password protect the Padlet, which is a bit similar to secret. It's just that it adds another layer of protection to it. So only people who know the Padlet will be able to access it. There's a third option that we have added recently, which is members only. So this is a way for you to avoid people posting anonymous posts on Padlet, and sometimes that may lead to abuse. So this is that only people who are logged into the Padlet account will be able to post it, and then you'll be able to see who is, who has posted. And the last one is basically public. So public is if you really want to share the Padlet with everyone, there's no personal data in there. You want to share it on Twitter. This is the option that you can go for. And if you want your Padlet to be searchable by Google, this is again an option that you can choose. So I'll keep it a secret for now. In terms of permissions, you can decide people who are going to have access to it, in what mode are they going to operate. And you have basically 3 options. You can either give them read-only setting. So if you're doing an exercise, you're just putting out content for students to read but not change, you should go with that setting. If you're doing an exercise where you expect students to contribute to that Padlet, you should choose the can write setting, because then they will be able to add posts to the Padlet. Or if you're doing, let's say, a group exercise where you want others to be able to edit the content that others are posting, right? So the group exercise can be with other teachers, or even within a group of students, where if someone is posting something and others are allowed to edit it, you can choose the can edit option, right? So by default, most of the time, for most of the exercises, the can write is the default option that works for people. So people will be able to add to the Padlet, but they will not be able to change what others have posted to the Padlet. Once you have chosen the setting, you are set to go and you're ready to share the Padlet. Now, when it comes to sharing, at the end of it, as long as you have the link to the Padlet, you can share it with, with all the channels that are possible to you. You can share it on a chat, you can email it, you can use whatever means that you have available to you, right? This is a convenient shortcut to basically copy the link to your clipboard. You have a few more advanced options. For example, if you're running a blog or a website and you want to embed the entire Padlet within that, you can use this option, which is going to give you the embed code that you can then go and add it to your blog. The rest are just convenient shortcuts that you can use to share the link on some of the most common services that we have. Okay, so the moment the content is ready, you're ready to share, you have chosen the right settings, you can just go ahead and share the link, and the Padlet will be ready for collaboration. So this is just a quick intro to show how to get started with Padlet, how to create a Padlet, how you can use some of the content posting options to post content by searching from within the Padlet itself, or by bringing external content to Padlet. And once you are done with that, use one of the sharing settings to share it with everyone. I will end my monologue here, and
that's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really fascinating when you've been using a tool for a really long time and then you see somebody who knows all about it talk about all of the kind of intricacies of how you can use it, because there's so many things that you've mentioned that I've been kind of furiously writing down that I didn't know about. I love that you can use a short link to create a new board automatically. I did not know that. And I love that you can paste a link directly onto the page as well. So yeah, thank you and lots of other things there that were really helpful. So we're going to have, I've got a few questions that I'd like to ask you. These are kind of partly based on discussions that I've had in the past with teachers. But if anybody who's on the call has a question that they would also like to ask, please feel free to either, you can write that in the chat, or sort of at the end of the call, we'll give you an opportunity to ask those questions. So yeah, make a mental note if you have anything that you'd like to ask Zoheb as well. But I thought that we would start with a question about an issue that I know that a lot of teachers spend a lot of time thinking about, particularly when they're using digital tools to support their teaching, and that is assessment and feedback. Are there some ways that you would say Padlet can sort of support assessment and feedback particularly well?
Absolutely. So when it comes to assessments, right, so there are a few examples already shared. So for example, if you're doing an homework assignment and you want to, what you can do is you can ask students to post links to the Padlets that they are creating, right? And then so they can go ahead and do the entire work. And once they're ready, they can just come and add that link to a post, right? Now, whenever you're running this kind of assessment or this kind of exercise, what you want to do is basically for students not to have access to other people's content till the exercise is over. And we have options for you to allow you to control that. So if you click on the cog over here, there are options on content filtering, right? So there's this option called require approval. So there are multiple ways in which you can use that. One is just if you want to vet the content that people are posting before it appears on the Padlet, you can use this setting. You can also use it to time the content when it appears on a Padlet. So once all the students have submitted their assignment, that's when you can basically approve all of them, and that's when they're going to be available for everyone to see, right? So that is one way in which you can use it for an assessment-based exercise. Another good way is to actually allow comments to be added to a Padlet, right? So if you're doing an exercise where, be it if you have asked a question and you have asked a question and you want students to respond to that, you can use the comments feature where students can go and type in their answers. You can also use comments to provide feedback, right? So if students are adding, let's say, links to their Padlets or even posts, you can use the comments to basically go ahead and give them feedback from then and there itself. There's some other feedback options that you can use. So things like reactions. So you can basically ask students to like, vote, give a rating, or even a grade, right? So depending on how granular you want to go, whether it has to be a binary yes or no, so you can go with a like and a vote, or if you want to give them a scale, so a star or 1 to 5, or even a numeric grade that can range from 1 to 100, right? So these are some of the other ways where you can basically get some feedback from people in addition to asking them to comment. There's just a very easy way to elicit that. And finally, the other things that you can do is, for example, you can do an exit ticket where you can embed a Google form as sort of a check-in or a quiz exercise. And once you embed that, typically with Google Forms, the form opens within Padlet itself, so you do not have to go to an external page. and you can just basically do a quick exercise or ask very specific questions tailored to that exercise and collect that feedback. So these are some of the ways in which you can use different features to guide that assessment.
That's great, thank you. So you've kind of touched on this already, but I also wanted to ask you, because obviously a lot of schools have kind of started using learning management systems over the last couple of years, and I wondered if you could you mentioned Google Forms already, but whether there are some ways that Padlet can potentially interact with some of those learning management systems in a kind of smooth way.
Absolutely. So typically learning management systems, I mean, the big players are your Moodle, Canvas, Blackboard, and similar products. So because sharing a Padlet is quite easy, you just need a link. So if you want to basically just share a Padlet on an LMS, I mean, that is a very perfectly possible way of doing that. So you can either use link or you can use the embed code to embed it within a Padlet. As part of our school-wide accounts, we also basically offer more advanced connectors, which basically makes accessing Padlet from within an LMS a lot easier. So for example, if you're in Canvas and you want to add Padlet as an assignment, you can just you can add Padlet as a tool. So once you click on that, basically you will have access to all the Padlets that you have created in your Padlet account. You can just select the Padlet that you want to add as an assignment, and that Padlet will automatically be embedded. Now, the advantage of basically doing that is when students access that Padlet, they will automatically be logged in with their LMS credentials. So you know exactly who is posting what, because this is a lot of times this is one thing that that teachers have to contend with, is that when students are posting, sometimes it gets posted in an anonymous mode because either they forgot to log in or it was not required, and then they have to basically trace who posted what. Using a Padlet embedded in an LMS basically automatically takes care of that. There are few other options that are available to you when you embed a Padlet in an LMS. Is you can put a setting which will create a copy of the Padlet when a student accesses it. So for example, if you're doing an assignment and you want everyone to work on their own copy of that Padlet, so you've just created a template and you want everyone to work on their own private copy, you can just basically choose a toggle, and when the students will access it, they will automatically get a clone of that template, and then they can work on it. Will automatically be added to that template, so you have access to that Padlet. So these are some of the things that you get with more deeper integrations if you have basically a school-wide account for a LMS.
Brilliant, thank you for sharing those.
Just to add on to that, so I mentioned the major ones. I mean, Google Classroom is another major one. At the moment, the integration with Classroom is pretty basic, so it is just a convenient shortcut for you, which you can access it over here. So all it does is basically guides you, opens a link to Google Classroom. Where you can quickly add it as an assignment. It still does not have the other features that I talked about, which are available in some of the traditional LMSs like a Moodle or a Blackboard.
Cool, thank you. So that's really helpful. And I know that a lot of the features that we've kind of talked about so far maybe are best used in the context of like a paid package with Padlet, but Padlet I know has more than one kind of package available, and there's a free sort of version, and then there's also the kind of paid model. Now I mentioned this because obviously for schools, budget is often a really major constraint, especially when it comes to adopting a new piece of technology. And I know that for a lot of schools, if they were going to invest in a tool like Padlet, they probably would want to try it out first. So I wondered if you could kind of explain to us a little bit about what is possible with the basic free version of Padlet, so that schools can kind of get a sense for where they might start if they're thinking about using it longer term, possibly then thinking about upgrading their membership as well.
Absolutely. So the basic version typically differs from the paid version in two things, right? So one is the number of Padlets you can create, and the other is how much upload size you get for each file that you upload to Padlet. Right. So for the first one, because in the free version we are limited by 3 Padlets, you can get a bit creative on how you basically use that. So one thing is you can recycle Padlets. So for example, if you're doing an exercise, you can just do the exercise and then clear the content. There's a very easy way to clear, clear all posts from within a Padlet and then just use that. Now, if you want to save a content, you can export it as a PDF, which is going to include all the links, or a spreadsheet if you want an offline copy of the Padlet if you need to use it later. Right? You can also instead of deleting a Padlet, you can also archive a Padlet. So what archive does, it basically puts a sort of in a recycle bin. So the Padlet is not deleted. It's just that it does not count towards your quota till it is, unarchived. So if you want a Padlet that you think you're going to use later, and you don't want to lose it, you can just archive it to free the quota, and later on you can just unarchive it to bring it back. Right? So that is another way where you can manage the quota for these things. When it comes to the upload size, now our upload size for the free tier used to be 10 megabytes per file. Recently, we have actually increased it to 25 megabytes, just to give people more capacity for them to upload their files. And another thing that we have done is basically we have added folders, which used to be a paid feature, as part of the free account itself. Right. So, I mean, a lot of people want organization as part of their account. So we have again made it free. So typically, some changes that we basically we incorporate from time to time, just so that more people can get more out of Padlet. Now, each Padlet is not limited in functionality in any way, whether you are in the free tier or you're in the paid account. So whatever you can do in a free account, the same things you'll be able to do in a paid account. If you use features like, for example, recording an audio or a video using the native options on Padlet, those are not subject to the upload size limit. So you'll be able to basically record much longer videos if you basically use the embedded video recorder. So you can still basically get a lot out of Padlet by being a bit creative, by managing your quota and working within the constraints. One thing that a lot of people do not know is actually we have a referrals feature. So you can actually, if you go to your account settings, you get a unique referral code. And if you basically share that and other people sign up using that referral code, for every 3 signups, you actually get an extra Padlet that is added to your account. So again, one of those things, if you want to share using your unique code, you have an option of increasing your quota.
That's brilliant. Thanks for that. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that, so that's really helpful. So yeah, another question that I had was, so I can kind of tell, and you kind of alluded to this in what you just said, that a lot of the changes that have been made to Padlet seem to have been very much drawn from the experiences of your users and the people who are using it, and I think it's really good to see, because I know that from my own experience using it, some of the changes, like for example the publish button, have made my life a lot easier. I think that although it was really exciting for children to be able to see other children typing things at the same time, it could also be quite distracting, and it could, I think, for some children feel a bit make them feel a bit self-conscious. So the fact that they have that publish tool means that they can create what they're creating in a kind of private space and then share it when they're ready. And I think that's been a really positive thing in my use of Padlet with children. So I really get the impression that you're listening to your users and the ideas that they might have for how you can improve the product. And I wondered if there are ways that if any of our audience has ideas or has thoughts or feedback, are there any ways that they could share them with you?
Absolutely. So we have a contact us page where you can contact Padlet for anything, right? If you're a user and you need support, you can do that. The same, you can use the same option to actually send us feedback. So let me quickly show it to you. So this is our contact page, and you'll see that you can choose, why you are contacting us, and there's an explicit option called feedback, right? So you just select that. You can send us any message. Every time when we get a message and it's a feedback, we have an internal way of managing all the feedback. So as more and more people start requesting the same things, it gets much higher votes, and that's when basically the product team looks at that and tries to basically incorporate it in the roadmap. And just to give you a few examples, for example, the members only privacy setting that I showed it to you, that was again a result of basically people having a problem on anonymous posting, and then ask if there's something that we can do to prevent people from doing that and make sure that people are logged in when they're posting stuff on that. Another thing that we did this year was we actually added 4 new languages to Padlet. So Padlet used to support 38 languages. Padlet was available in 38, and now we support 42 languages. And this was, again, we did a Twitter poll, polling our users on what kind of languages Padlet should support, and based on the output of that poll, then we went ahead and then we included a lot more languages. So anytime if you have a question or suggestion or feedback, feel free to send it to us. It will always get looked at. Now, sometimes we will need a bit more time to actually work on it, And that's why more and more people, when they request something, it automatically gets prioritized. And then we know that it's very important to the people who are actually using Padlet.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Just out of curiosity, do you know off the top of your head what those 4 languages were?
Yeah, so Estonian, Latvian, Lithuanian, and traditional Chinese.
Ah, cool. Thanks. Okay, cool. So we're sort of drawing towards the close of the session, but I know that because you've kind of worked with lots of different educators who've probably been using Padlet in lots of different ways, although it's really nice for us to see a kind of example of how the tool works, I thought it would be really good if we could see some examples of it in practice. Do you have some that you would like to share with us?
Yes, absolutely. So I mean, Padlet is used in so many different ways that I think what people actually use Padlet for and the creative ways that they use it. Sometimes I don't think we ourselves can come up with those kind of use cases. So I'm just going to show you a few Padlets that I personally find very interesting because they're just ingenious or creative. Now, Padlet, I mean, by default, it gets used in exit tickets, feedbacks, brainstorming, and everything. So those are the very standard users. So I've tried to basically choose a set of examples which try to basically show something in slightly in a bit more different light to the kind of things that normally teachers do with Padlet. The first example is, again, it's a very simple concept. It's around, so the Padlet is around, just taking an abstract mathematical idea like a line or a circle, and then asking students to post an image of an item, an everyday item that basically, mirrors that. So the reason why I like this is, again, it's the idea is very simple, but it's done in such a better way because it's a lot more fun, and it actually makes it a lot more real. So in terms of retention power, doing an exercise like that is a lot better than just basically putting in text explaining a line or a point. And some of the answers are are just fascinating, right? So for example, if you look at a point, this is like the center of Ferris wheel is a point. It's a big point, but definitely, I mean, the kind of answers that you sometimes get, it's funny, and then people can and students can actually basically look at everyday items and try to put that concept into practice. So just for the idea itself, because it is very simple, I personally like this Padlet a lot as an exercise to do. Now, again, I'm going to show samples from things that people share on Twitter or sometimes on email. So again, a huge shout out to people who have actually created this content and shared it with us. Now, the next one is, again, this is a very, very brilliant Padlet. It's actually a murder mystery. So it's a very heavy Padlet. There's a lot of there are a lot of things going on here, but it's so brilliantly arranged using our Canvas format that I find it a very, very good use of Padlet. So on the left is basically everything that you need to know about the murder mystery. So things like forensic training, the casebook, and everything, and then you have basically how you can use the clues to basically go from the first point till you basically solve the murder mystery, right? So tasks like estimate the sex and the height, look for other clues, which clue leads to which other clue connected by arrows, and look at basically a fact file to basically check that. So I find this like very brilliantly arranged and very clear in terms of, putting a murder mystery on a Padlet is not easy because there's so much content, but I think this user did an excellent job of basically putting it there and then guiding people to actually solve the murder mystery. So again, one of the very innovative use cases I've seen of being Padlet used. Now, the next one is actually just very simple, right? And this is the reason why I chose this. It's a bit off topic. Typically, it's just you basically do an exercise on a word kindness day where you get students to just share, what they have done to be kind that day, right? So again, it's not necessary to use Padlet just in a pedagogical setting. You can basically do a lot fun exercises or off-topic exercises to make activities a bit more lively. And again, some of the responses over here are quite funny. So again, when you do exercises like that, the responses that the students give are just brilliant sometimes. Now, the next one is actually it's a story review, a book review, right? This is actually something that one of my colleagues created. So it's the story of Cinderella, and again using the Canvas format. Now, personally, for me, whenever I'm looking for any story telling, I typically go for the timeline format because it's a lot more suited for that. But in this case, I just love the way it is presented. Typically, the color combination, the white background, and the black text, and it has a very nice gradient to it, right? So basically, the story starts over here, then you basically go up, it reaches a climax, and then all the way it basically comes down, and this is where it ends, right? So again, most of us are familiar with the story of Cinderella, but if someone has not read it, I think this should be the go-to resource for them to get a gist of what the story is about. And it's just beautifully presented using just very simple posts and color coding. Now, the next two examples that I'm going to show is, I like it because they're just so practical. Right, so this is something that user Jen shared with us on Twitter. It's basically, so teachers have some extra stuff in their classrooms, and then they want to swap it. She just created a Padlet where you can put in the furniture that you want, that you are interested in having, and you can just comment on that. So I mean, it's so easy, and I was thinking, if I can find another tool, how would I do it differently? And I thought that I mean, using a Padlet for this is it's just so convenient, so easily accessible, and it's just brilliant. So again, just for the ingenuity of using Padlet outside the classroom, I really like this idea. And again, on a similar vein of being practical itself, this is one of the schools basically put in a Padlet which has basically bus schedules and from which lanes they go. To basically, and apparently there are a lot of buses, and buses keep on changing. So again, just from a practical point, if you want to put up stuff for students, after class, and this information keeps on changing, instead of basically putting it on a paper or basically emailing or putting announcements, you can just put it in a Padlet, update the information as it comes, and then it's very easily accessible to everyone. So it's a gamut of basically school exercises, off-topic exercises, and just practical stuff that that people do with Padlet that I absolutely love and like.
That's great. Thanks so much for sharing those with us. There's some really interesting ideas there that I never would have thought of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I said. I mean, sometimes when you look at an idea and you're like, oh, it never crossed my mind that you could use Padlet in such a way.
Yeah, and I have to say, I do find myself very, very frequently, if I'm faced with a situation where I'm like, oh, I need to think of a tool to use to do this job. So often Padlet ends up being the answer because it's just so versatile. You can just use it in so many different ways. So it just it just lends itself to lots of different things. I know that some of our viewers might have seen, for example, the webinar about the UNICEF Learning Bridges project that took place in Jordan, where Padlet was used as to sort of send out a massive network of lessons across to children all across the country throughout the pandemic, and that project is continuing now as well, and is still using Padlet. So the kind of the amount and the variety of content that was used in that project is just really quite mind-blowing, and how they used the fact that you can connect Padlets together so that it was very easy to navigate and find your way from one lesson to the next and things like that. So that's another use of it that I've seen, but I also use it loads myself, so for lots of different things, all a bit different to what you've shown us, but all equally really, really helpful. So thank you so much for taking us through all of that.
My pleasure.
I'll just check, does anybody who's present want to ask any questions before we finish off? Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Lorna. Oh, thanks, Lorna. So Lorna says it's her first introduction to Padlet, and she'd seen them but not used it herself, and didn't realize how versatile it was. So thank you. So brilliant, Lorna. I'm glad that you could join us, and I'm glad that you found it helpful. So with that, I think we'll close the session unless you have anything else that you'd like to share, Zoheb.
No, that's it. Thank you everyone who joined and then who's going to watch the recording later. And again, thank you, Rowan, for organizing it. Very happy to be a part of it.
Thank you, and thanks everyone for joining us.